has both some of that density along range line, but also has not as many stories and kind of some public plazas. And that, we have an actual appraisal that says $200 million for an as-built. And the property taxes that would be coming off a project like that, and this isn't a dream idea. You just have to look to the north or to the south to see the city doing it.
Councilor Green.
Other projects.
Yeah, following up on something Councilwoman Campbell asked. This was voted on at the CRC and approved?
Yes, the CRC approved 5-0.
Yeah, and I know Councilman Worrell was there, I think. Is there anything that came from that meeting in writing that we can review? You know, kind of like summarizing or what was actually approved in the CRC?
We took a voice vote. I'm happy to send around the purchase agreement that lists the details, but it's a fairly straightforward purchase agreement. There aren't any special issues. That this is just another acquisition of property that CRC routinely does. It's just it happens to this is just a routine property acquisition for the CRC. It's something that we regularly do.
Yeah. And I have some other questions about kind of the process. And if I know you don't have any timeline on it, and it sounds like it's still in negotiations. Some of the process is still in negotiations.
We have a purchase agreement, and we're in the middle of due diligence, but I suspect that it'll move very quickly, provided this council does not disapprove of the purchase today. As far as the big plans moving forward, that doesn't exist today. There are a lot of local businesses here, and they're not going to go anywhere for a while. And this kickstarts kind of potential proposals from private developers because they know that there's a seller looking to redevelop. The other opportunity, of course, is that if the city doesn't purchase it, a private developer could come in and raise the whole place and build something that currently zoning would allow. But we want to redevelop in a way that our entire central core, the rest of the central core, has been redeveloped because it's been so successful.
Might remind everyone, if I may, that the city has already purchased the Thrifty, with the former Thrifty office and used car or rental car facility, and raised it, which was on the, if you think of this property as a square, it was a little piece cut out of that square on the northeast corner. One of our development partners, of course, owns a strip just north of City Center Drive, which had originally been purchased for the city, and it makes sense that some of this property at least be developed in conjunction with that strip. I believe the purchase agreement goes away if this is not closed by November 1. Is that correct, Henry?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all right, so in the purchase agreement, does it kind of detail or explain how the properties, who's going to manage the properties once we purchase?
It does not spell that out, and
I can, again, if you'd like me to. Our practice has been, Counselor, to usually hire a management company to do that. We've done that for the small center we purchased in conjunction with the roundabout at the southeast corner of Range Line and City Center. I would anticipate taking some proposals from various local management companies to do that. It appears the income from, it'll be several years before the redevelopment plan would be approved, and the income from the property would be fairly substantial during that period.
Councilor Finkham.
Mr. President, I'd like to defer to Councilor Worrell right now.
Councilor Worrell.
Mayor, and I appreciate Director Mistesky's approach to this property. I know that you have some thoughts regarding the importance of this property to the overall plan that is now going on 15-some years old. I don't know that we've heard it articulated to the public why this piece of property is important to completing that plan. I would ask you maybe to, there or up there, whichever you feel comfortable, but to give us the justification for this particular piece of property. I've heard it, a lot of the councils have heard it, but I don't know the public has, and I think that's really important on this piece.
I agree. Thank you. When I first ran for mayor, I'll make this brief, but I'm going to start back in 1995. And knocked on thousands of doors. At that point, Carmel, the school district, at least the city wasn't as big as we had annexed yet, but the school district was about just under 50 square miles. We had a 4-block, pretty run-down downtown, and that was it. I heard from people, thousands of people, as I conducted that campaign, that heard it in different ways, but wish we had a downtown, wish we had a place to show off when friends and family came in from out of town, wish we could go out for a dinner and a show in Carmel. Now I have to drive 45 minutes each way. All basically a yearning for a traditional city, traditional walkable downtown in our edge city, in our suburban area. So we recognize that the Art and Design District, what back then we called Old Town, needed a lot of work. We borrowed money, put about $20 million, now paid off, $20 million in $96 to rebuild almost all the streets in the Old Town area. Started to do a series of public-private partnerships in that area, and run through them real fast. All these things were done because of what we're proposing we do on this site. Be the Design Center, the building with the turret at the southeast corner of Main and Range Line, the Larry Art Gallery, the project to the north Fountains, those live-work units and townhomes. Of course, most recently, Anthony's Chop House. Sophia Square, the building that houses Muldoon's and Basbo's, our first project in that area. Every one of these were private partnerships starting about 22 years ago. And they remade that Old Town area. It's become vibrant, successful. But knowing that area was, our land mass is almost double the size of the land mass of the island of Manhattan, New York City. It's about 27 square miles, if memory serves me right. We're almost 50 square miles. So we went and bought 88 acres at the city center. We actually put in City Center Drive. That same bond issue, we borrowed money to do that, to connect it over what was then called Adams Street to the west. That's now paid off as well, I should mention. Master planned that area, built the Palladium, the James Building, the theaters, improved, built the Veterans Plaza with a lot of help from the community. Earmark for the reflecting pool, entered in public partnerships for what was the Amley Apartments, now in TS Apartments. Pegcore Square came. Again, we used a portion of the increase in taxes from those developments to pay for the underground parking, the parking structures. The Mez, Hoosier Realty built their building on the corner. Originally, the Schwinn Bike Shop, the Kestner Building, now Salon 01. Nash Building, Spaghetti Factory, the building in between. All these were part of our city center project, which has created a tremendous amount of value. Then the connection up and down, Monon Trail didn't exist at that point. We got the Monon Trail in place. Then we started to connect the two redevelopment districts with what we're calling the Midtown development. And it's almost completed. This land stands in the middle. This will make the connection between the city center and the Midtown development, which is connected to the Art and Design District. It's absolutely critical to continue what we started 22 years ago and to do it successfully. I would love to negotiate a better price for the property, but I don't think it's an unreasonable price given the cost of land in the area. I'll be glad to take the credit or the arrows for the price, but I think it was fair price given prices what's going on in that area and the potential we have as leaders in the city to work with the private sector to create much greater tax value in that area, as well as work with the private sector to create a beautiful place that connects our other redevelopment districts. This is a key property. Did I answer your question, Jeff?
You did, thank you. These are tough decisions. I don't personally take it lightly. It is, but I can't, and I've served on the Carmel Redevelopment Commission for, I think, almost 15 years now, and there are many cases of historically where a price seemed unbelievable or seemed unusual or was out of what had been the norm for that period of time. But I can't help but walk down the Monon, walk down Main Street, walk down any of our areas of Carmel, and that's forgotten because it got us to the next step. It created a lifestyle and a quality of life that really is not found in too many places. Now, I came to this meeting tonight having voted on this at the Redevelopment Commission, and at the Redevelopment Commission I said that I wanted to advance this to the next step of, I think my words were scrutiny by the City Council. I did not come to this meeting thinking that it would not go to committee. I thought it would. But the ordinance is the ordinance. And as leaders, sometimes we are asked to do things that are maybe not the way we planned, but it's not like this turned up yesterday. We've been talking about it, thinking about it, meeting about it, and studying it. I am convinced that this piece of land is critical to keep the momentum going. It is not using or creating any new debt. It is using money that has already been earmarked for this exact type of situation. And I apologize to my colleagues who are disappointed by the process, but we voted for the ordinance. And so if our legal team is telling us this is what has to happen, I am prepared to take the vote tonight.
Councilor
Back here,
Carter.
I'll tell you one quick story and then I'll be quiet. A number of years ago, 17, 18 years ago,
Mr. Mayor,
probably.
asked to be recognized, please.
Yeah.
Mr. Carter was next.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize that. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What Jeff said, I thought was said very well. I would add to this that I think there are two things that I articulated to you in an email a couple weeks ago. And both of those things have come up this evening. Both of those things are the objections that council has had. And so far, those objections haven't been handled. The first objection by some members of council is that they feel like the price is too high in regards to the appraisals. You've touched on that a little bit, but then let me go to the next objection. The next objection is that there's no plan. Well, I too served on the CRC for a long time. And those of us who have served on the CRC, and most of us on council know that you can't have a plan, in particular, until the property is in hand, until developers start to come to the city and say, I see you have this piece of land, here's what I'd like to do with it. Here's how I'd like to see it developed. A great example is when we got control of the 88-acre bean field that is now city center. About that point in time, you began to get interest from people in that property. If my memory serves me right, I think you talked to over 150 developers with different plans for that. Until we have this in hand, there's not going to be plans that are going to come forward and details that can be provided to council from the standpoint of what's going to happen with it, what's the timeline, what's going to be built there, et cetera, et cetera. We all know, I think, that it's an appropriate piece of land to fulfill the vision of a downtown for Carmel. So I think that, I hope that that particular objection is taken care of. And Laura, you have raised that, I think, also from the standpoint of you were concerned that there weren't details. But I think at this point in time, this is the most detail we're going to be able to get until developers step forward now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, and say, here's what we'd like to do with it, and here's a timeline, and et cetera, and here's what we'll pay for it, or here's what we'd like you to do as a city in the way of infrastructure, et cetera. So hopefully that objection is taken care of, but I don't know that the objection is as yet taken care of from the standpoint of the perceived divergence between $15 million and the $11.5 million. I think for us to move forward on this, especially tonight, that's got to be addressed a little better and a little more in depth. I read the 86-page appraisal. I know Jeff did, and I think some others on council did. There are some details in there, but after reading that appraisal report, all 86 pages, I feel like that probably they were off on the amount that they appraised the property at because of one of the things that you had indicated, which was that they don't really catch up very rapidly with the times, and appraisers are extremely cautious. On top of that, I was concerned about the fact that where they got the properties from that they used as comps. You don't particularly compare what's going to be built or what the prices are in Brownsburg to the prices in Carmel. That's just not appropriate from the standpoint of comps. So I think there might have been one other objection I did hear this evening instead of 2, 3, and that is that maybe the community needs to understand that this was not a decision taken lightly. Community needs to understand that this was a situation where council has put a lot of time and effort into this. By law, we're able to have executive sessions in regards to the purchase of real estate. We had a 2-hour executive session with Henry, where we heard much the same thing we've heard this evening and had a chance to talk about it. We've talked about the other portions of what this sale might or might not entail for the community and the future of the plans for Midtown. So I just want the public to know that this is not the first time we've heard this. In fact, we've heard about it a lot and for a long time. I don't know that we are going to get, in conclusion, that we are going to get much more in the way of detail tonight or within the next 2 weeks, because until there's a deal, until there is someone who comes forward and says, I want this piece of land from you, those details won't be there. So from my point of view, I think it's appropriate that we go ahead and vote on this evening. And in fact, I'm not sure that we can't vote on it this evening with the way it's written.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
I'll skip the story I was going to tell, but it was very quickly. Well, I will tell it quickly. It was, got a call from Judy Hagan when she was trustee about 18 years ago saying, why don't you buy some land? Just became available over on the northwest side. I know you're looking for a street department site. Wanted to move it out of the higher price land. And she has $28,000 an acre. And this was maybe late 90s. And I thought it was way too high. Within 3 years, that land was selling for $70,000 or $75,000 an acre. So I sort of learned my lesson on that one. Fortunately, we did buy it. But I think this is good value for the taxpayers. I've looked at all the comps myself, negotiated it. I think it's good. I think it's appropriate. I think it'll, as we look back in years in the future, we'll see this as a good step towards creating more taxable value and a beautiful place for the community.
Councilor Green.
Addressing something that Councilman Worrell brought up. You said you had on the CRC for 15 years, and, occasionally you see a situation like this, but in the 2 years that I've been on, it seems like it's becoming more the norm than a unique situation where we're purchasing something far more than what the appraisal is. Between the Mohawk properties and this property and other situations out there. So I understand it's rare over the 15 years or whatever, but it seems like it's becoming more of a norm, and that's my concern, moving forward with this.
Councilor Kimball.
Yes, representing the Central District here. I've been in support of our public-private partnerships. I think Carmel CRC is probably a model around the state, if not the country. But what I see the positive of entering into another public-private partnership is to our neighborhoods. Traditionally, your central neighborhoods are the ones that decay. That's not happening here in Carmel. Today, our neighborhoods adjacent to our projects are probably some of the strongest neighborhoods we have, some of the most desirable neighborhoods we have for people wanting to come in and rehab. They're looking for the walkability, bicycle friendliness. So I would like to see the city grab control of this because they're going to be more sensitive, again, to all the businesses that these neighborhoods are supporting right now. I would hate to lose that sensitivity with just a private developer coming in. I'm not too concerned about the appraisal. I've had from UCLA took residential appraisals. I've took a commercial appraisal course. I understand the pitfalls. It's a science, but yet it's an art. I understand they're reporting to the banks. They want a lot of equity to minimize risk. So all in all, I'm in favor of us taking control of the property.
One
Mr. Mayor.
thing I might want to point out, the property today is paying $61,580 worth of property tax. If the new net value after redevelopments, hypothetically, is $200 million, let's even take $40 million off of that, a 20% discount on the assumption that the assessor may not assess what goes into it at $200 million. That'd be $2.7 million a year of revenue for the city. So potential to increase our tax base by redeveloping this property. There's tremendous, getting rid of that, it's probably an acre of building on that 9-acre site and 8 acres of parking. That would be good for the taxpayers. The appraised property at 111 South Range Line, east of the Design Center, just listed 1.1 acres. Listed, not closed. I want to explain that. For $2.9 million. That comes out to $2.65 million an acre compared to this purchase price of $1.7 million per acre.
Mr. Carter.
Thank you, sir. Ashley, I'm prepared to make a motion, but I need some help from you from the standpoint of the wording that's on the agenda
Yes.
is not as clear as I believe it needs to be.
May look
So-
at the actual wording. The wording on the agenda asks for the approval of the purchase.
It does ask for the approval of the purchase or to review.
Request to,
Ask for approval.
it's true.
Okay.
It says a request to review the approval for the purchase.
Okay. Before I make this motion, let me just preface this by saying also that, thank you, Ashley, is that I never have been one that said that we had to have 7-0 votes on everything the council does. I've certainly been on the short end of the stick more times than I'd like to think about. Tony, there have been a number of them where I've been the one out of 7. So I say that from the standpoint of if this is not a unanimous vote, and it's not going to be, I'm okay with that. And so I'm going to make a motion that we approve this purchase of the parcel located at 620 South Range Line Road.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and the president has kept his mouth shut, and I'm going to get a say before we vote. And we are going to vote tonight, and I owe Henry an apology. When I do something that's inappropriate in front of a group, I apologize in front of the same group. Henry, I'm sorry. I don't disagree with the concept. I love public-private partnerships. I hate the way this process is happening tonight. And it's part of my own ignorance. Mr. Worrell came to me and said that at CRC, he said he was moving this to the next process, and his comment to me was, this is going to committee. And out of my own ignorance, blaming nobody else, I did not check on that. So this is getting voted on tonight. If we had gone to committee and gone through the details I want to go through, you'd have my vote. You're not going to have my vote tonight because $15 million doesn't bother me. I know how important this piece of property is. I know from being involved in this situation how expensive the property is around here. I don't have an issue with the value. I did originally, but once I read the details and went over the appraisal, had a good conversation with Ron, and Mr. Carter made some comments at our last meeting where he said, we've created value. And the mayor, you've told him many times that we're creating value. Well, we've created a value. I also think that the state legislature should take municipal purchases out of appraisals because municipalities nationwide pay a higher value because they know what they're trying to attain. I know he's gone, the speaker's gone. But there's some details here that, and when I say details, Mr. Carter, I wasn't referring to details about the project itself. I was referring to, and I'm going to use an example, and I would not have done this if this had gone to committee. An example is Presidium. When we started that project, I said we didn't need to own that land. I disagreed with you. We did not need to buy that land. And you said, why? I said, because it's called zoning. It's called tax increment financing. The developers need us in these public-private partnerships. That's why it's called public-private partnership. Without us, they can't do it. They can't do it to the level that we're looking for. That's the reason for public-private partnerships. Presidium started out where they were going to pay us some money for the land. And it was going to be like a 75-25 split in the tax increment financing. By the end of the deal, we gave them the land, or some minor amount, and it was 100% of the tax increment financing. One of the details that I wanted in this, since we have created the value, I know we're going to require some pretty extensive architecture because of what it's next to, and there's going to be some extensive infrastructure. There is no private developer that could buy this. So the landowner telling you there's a private offer is irrelevant. Because, again, they need us. They cannot go in and get the parking done and get Veterans Way going through the middle and create it the way it needs to be. Can't be done. And 2 years, 3 years from now, I'm going to tell you, I was right again. It can't be developed without us. There is not a rush. The council should have been given time to take it to committee like Mr. Worrell thought, and talk about the details. And I don't mean details of the development. I mean details of how it was going to be. We're spending $15 million. We should have more input than we're having. There's not one piece of paper showing us anything. So what could have eventually been my vote, and as it goes down the road, I'm going to end up supporting things that go there. But as of tonight, and I'm partially blaming my own ignorance, I'm going to be a no vote because, it's just, we need more inclusion. I've been saying this to you, and I repeated it heavily before the last election. The communication between us and you and other issues of the city is still not good enough. It needs to improve, and tonight is a perfect example of it. We need more details. I have been a partner of yours for 11 years. We've disagreed on some things, but more or less, I understood the concepts. And this isn't going to change that. But I'm very disappointed in this process. I helped put this in place, and obviously not well enough. I'm going to learn. I won't do it again. Because I wanted some oversight of this. When we put $15 million, I didn't want the $15 million of land acquisition in the bond, but it was going to be there. And I always give advice to citizens. When you don't like something, fight to beat it. But at the same time you're fighting to beat it, fight to make it the best it can be in case it wins. So I thought, well, let's put some oversight in. Well, I didn't do a very good job. So I'm only blaming myself, but it's the reason I'm voting no tonight. Any other comments, discussion before we vote?
Just one.
Councilor Worrell.
Since I'm getting blamed for the committee comment.
It was not a blame. It was my own ignorance.
I do want to just since you said it, Councilor Ryder, I just want to make sure in executive session, we did talk about that it is very hard to come up with plans and details about a project, and we used examples. Now, right or wrong, but I think Mr. Carter made that point at the executive session. It's very difficult to do that, and that's not the way that it's been done in the past. So,
In answer to your comment.
you're the president, so you get last comment.
I already answered the detail. I'm going to respond back. I already answered the detail. I don't want details of the project. I wanted to talk about if we were going to get money back for the land because we've created value. If we were going to do 75-25, we need coverage on our TIF. We need it. It will harm us to give away 100% of the TIF on this project. But it will probably take that to get what we want built there. Mr. Mayor.
All I was going to say, we haven't made any decisions about that. I take these things in step order. First is to acquire the property. We'll request proposals, start discussion with various developers, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about how the deal is put together later.
I'm going to repeat, we need coverage. Everybody needs to remember that.
Council will have oversight. If there's any lending involved, council has oversight.
Well, I was just going to say we have a question in front of us.
Yes. Call the question. All those in favor, please vote. Oops. We have 4-3. And 15 announcements.
I did have one announcement. I understand the county council has cut dollars from, or is withholding dollars in regards to the Hamilton County Convention and Visitors Bureau, and that we may have to cut some projects out. I heard this week, and Mr. Mayor, if you would look into that.
We will.
Maybe affecting what we can do as far as work downtown.
I'm not
Some things.
prepared to
I understand.
answer that tonight. We'll look into it.
I understand.
Any other announcements? How about a motion to adjourn upon execution of documents, please? Thank you. We're adjourned.